I really hated the feeling of being limited by fear because I feel like in a lot of ways that shows up in our lives without us really being super conscious of it. And it's really easy to convince ourselves that we don't want to do something that we're afraid of. So then we make all these excuses to not even try to do the thing. But really the driver in that situation is your fear of failure or, just fear. So when I experienced highlining, that put me in such a visceral experience of fear, and I felt how it fully shut my system down. Like I felt like I couldn't even think properly. I couldn't move. I was just frozen. That was like a very big wake up call to holy crap, I don't want to live my whole life feeling this way in any area. So maybe if I can overcome it in this really extreme way, then I'm going to have control over it in all the little ways that it takes over.
Hello, intrepid listeners, and welcome to the Carpe Diem Live Your Dream podcast. My guest this week is Taylor St. Germain, currently ranked 4th in the world in competitive freestyle highlining. I love this episode, both because I learned a whole lot about a really cool and rapidly growing sport of highlining, and because Taylor has a great life lesson she shares that anyone can learn from. But I won't give that surprise away just yet. Better that you hear it from Taylor herself. And if you like this episode or my other episodes, I would love it if you could send a link of the podcast to a few of your friends. Enjoy the show. Taylor St. Germain, welcome to the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. Quick little background about me. I am a freestyle highliner that used to be terrified of heights. So,
Oh,
um,
really?
sounds a little bit crazy, but was a regular old, cat, like most people would feel when they're up really high, but just was really tired of being limited by my fear. And now that's kind of my mission in life is to do the things that scare me and encourage other people to get outside of their comfort zones as well.
So that's interesting. You said highlining. I've always thought of it as slacklining, so there must be somewhat of a difference. And then you're a competitive one. So could you just explain a little bit about the sport, what it is, different categories, things like that? And then we'll get into how on earth did you get into this given your fear of heights?
Of
But yeah,
course.
what is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, a lot of people consider slacklining kind of like tightrope walking. It does look similar because you are walking on a straight line. Slacklining versus highlining really just is the difference between how high up you are. So the big difference between tightrope walking and slacklining or highlining is that you are not on a rope and it isn't tight. So it's actually a flat piece of webbing, much like a ratchet strap, except it's actually 1 inch wide in most cases. People do like slacklining on like the 2 inch slack lines, and that's what you'll often see beginners practicing on, or people that do trick lining, which is where you're like bouncing and doing tricks close to the ground. That's always a 2 inch line. What I'm on is actually thinner than that. It's 1 inch. The idea is that it makes it lighter and it has slack to it. So unlike a tightrope that's very rigid, slacklining allows you to have a bit more playfulness, a bit more movement. And so that's why we don't carry like that bar that you'll see people tightrope walking with. We just use our arms to balance. So a little bit different, but kind of looks the same to most people. And then what I do is called freestyle highlining. It's where you're up high enough so that you have a harness and a leash. So you are tied in. We do not risk our lives up there. But you are able to bounce on the line and do tricks and like rolls and flips and things like that.
Rolls and flips. Actually, I will admit, while I know very little about the sport, I did look up some YouTube videos before this recording. I'm blown away by what people are doing. I can't even stand on one, much less do a flip or anything like that.
Yeah, it's definitely, well, the cool thing is that it's a fairly new sport. Like it hasn't been around for that long. So it's like it's evolving every single day. The equipment that we use is getting better. The tricks that people are doing are getting crazier. Like what I do, like freestyle highlining, wasn't really even around like 10 years ago. People are inventing new tricks all the time. We're constantly pushing the limits. So it's been really cool to see the progression of the sport and the evolution of it. So it's crazy to think what it's going to be in another 10, 20 years.
Give us an example of like what has evolved in the time that you've been involved, whether it's equipment or some different tricks that you've figured out or others have figured out.
Well, for example, like there's one trick that when it was first landed, they named it the Almighty because it was one of those things that seemed impossible to do. And it's basically when you do a flip around the line where you don't use your hands to grab onto it, you just hook your foot underneath the line. It kind of looks like a Jedi move or something. Like you're really like you're standing straight up on the line. Your feet stay connected to it, but you do a flip around it. And that seemed when people kind of conceived that trick, they were like, that would be insane. We could call it the Almighty because it seems impossible. And now that's one of the more basic freestyle tricks. And that only happened within like 5 years. So, kind of crazy that a trick that seemed like impossible is now, all of us are doing it consistently
Oh,
and in combos with much harder tricks.
oh, that sounds so cool. So, so you lock your feet around, you're standing there, you hook your feet around and then you just like
Flip around.
lunge off to the side and
Pretty much, yep.
spin down and back up. That
Yep.
is really cool.
It
Okay.
feels really cool too. It's definitely one of my favorite tricks. But what's getting even crazier is that now we're adding bungees to the anchors of the line. So you can imagine that that obviously creates even more amplitude and more power in our bounces. So now people are starting to do tricks where your body fully leaves the line, like you shoot off to the side and you come around and then you land on top without even touching the line to bring yourself back to it. So it looks totally unnatural. And people are able to do with these bungees like crazy, like double and triple rotations that seemed impossible even just a couple years ago. So things are evolving like crazy. And I think with the bungee anchors, it's just going to be exponential.
Wow. So I don't want to give away any trade secrets of yours, but is there a particular trick that you're really working on trying to nail right now?
Um, there is one trick that I have been working on. I kind of gave it a bit of a rest for a while because I took a bit of time off of training after the world championship, but it's called a holy grail. So it's a
The Almighty, the Holy
yeah,
Grail.
you
I
can
see
see
a
that
theme here.
there's a theme. Yes, there's also a lot of Star Wars themed tricks because we all get to like if you land a trick, you get to name it. So people like to have
Oh,
fun with it. But the Holy Grail is pretty much it's an almighty with an extra rotation at the end, but where you grab the line for the second rotation. It's pretty wild, but I've gotten close to it a few times. Just haven't consistently worked at it for the past year or so. So hoping to get back to that
explain
when I get back to training.
explain that more. So it's an Almighty, but you're doing what?
So it's a double rotation, and the first rotation is an almighty. So you just hook your foot and rotate around with your body kind of elongated, and then you tuck in really tight and grab onto the line for the second rotation.
So you're more in a ball on the second round.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know which rotation is more difficult. I guess the second one.
Yeah, it's the second one because you have to really pull with your foot to get your body close to the line and then hold on and keep your feet on top and then stand up at the end. So that can be pretty challenging and it kind of scrambles your brain a little bit.
Yeah, you got some negative G's going on.
Yeah, it definitely took me a while to get used to that kind of rotation.
Does anyone do a double Almighty?
Oh yeah, yeah. Now that the bungees are common, people are doing double almighties like crazy.
Have you ever named a trick?
Um,
Like
not
landed something new and different that you got to name?
I have landed things that are new, but I never really gave them any kind of like silly name. I kind of just named them based off of what it is broken down. So like I've done a lot of tricks to a position called pointer. It's where you're sideways on the line with your knee balancing on the line and you have your like one leg extended behind you and one leg or one arm extended in front of you. It's kind of if you ever do yoga, it's the bird dog pose, but on a sideline. So I've done like rocket to pointer, double shoulder roll to pointer, and I never gave them any like fancy names. I just call them what they are, like double shoulder roll to pointer.
Oh, I want to. I'm gonna have to keep following competitions and find out if you've named. You got to get some creativity into those.
I know, I know. I just I find it gets confusing when people give tricks too many crazy names. So I kind of just keep it. I've got a very like mathematical brain, so
Yeah, okay. So they're explanatory. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
However, it isn't easy to say in a competition if you're trying to yell out the trick super quick. It is a lot faster to just say things like "Almighty." So maybe I should get more creative, but the next one I'll
Yeah.
land, I'll keep you in mind, Dale, and I'll make sure to come up with
Okay.
something good.
You can call it the carpe diem.
Perfect. Oh, I like that actually. That's perfect.
There you go. So you mentioned the World Championship. You are ranked quite high in International Slackline Association World Rankings, I think, right? Can you explain what those rankings are, how they work, and where you stand in them?
Yeah, so basically you get points based on where you place in competitions. It gets a bit confusing because there's different levels of competitions just based on the level of athletes that will be there and the type of judging criteria. And I think it's actually based on how many people are from different countries. So that's what makes something like a world championship versus just a masters comp or like amateur style competition. But anyway, you basically just get points based on how you ranked, and then those add up and put you on the ranking list. So like right now, I think I'm fourth over the last 3 years, and then for
And
2024, I think I'm
that's fourth in freestyle highline,
yes for freestyle highlining for women.
fourth in the world. Man, wow,
I know it's
cool.
crazy. I never would have thought.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm
cool.
like, what? Who am I? It's crazy. I never thought I would ever even be able to do this sport, let alone be one of the top ranked athletes in the world. So you never know where you're going to end up, but don't just have an open mind, basically.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess when this all started for you, you weren't really like aiming to be world class, or were you?
No, definitely not in the beginning. I mean, my first time on a highline, I looked at my ex-boyfriend now, but my boyfriend at the time, I he was the one who got me into it, and I was like, never make me do that again because I had no interest. I was terrified.
Yeah.
But you know,
Is that why he's X? No,
no, no, we
kidding.
we separated on good terms and all that. But no, he was the reason that I got introduced to highlining. And at first, I really thought like, okay, that can be his thing. Like, I don't need to do this. This is crazy. I was already trying to overcome my fears rock climbing, and that
Uh,
already felt like a
uh,
lot. So then to do like highlining where you don't even have anything to hold on to, and you're just like feeling like you're floating in space, I was like, no, 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 this is too much. So anyway, I didn't really think that it was something that I even wanted to do. But then watching him do it, eventually I kind of was like, man, it's so cool. Like I kind of wish I could do it. And then I realized, okay, well, what's stopping you? The fact that you're afraid. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I better try to do this. And so it was one of those things where I just kind of thought like, okay, I will be able to do it, but it's never going to be fun. I mean, fast forward 4 years after that, and it was, the most fun thing in the world. But yeah, definitely, it took me a while before I actually thought that there was any real dream of being at the level that I'm at.
and so, how long have you been working at this?
Ooh, like almost 6 years now, I think, because I started
Wow.
like
So
2019. So yeah,
from kind of like a kid fear of heights to world ranked in 6 years. That's cool. That's really great.
yeah, definitely feels a bit surreal.
I like the theme here. It sounds like part of your draw to this sport was to embrace your fear and just address it head on and just say, what the heck? I'm going to do this and maybe I'll get over my fear.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much exactly it. Like I really hated the feeling of being limited by fear because I feel like in a lot of ways that shows up in our lives without us really being super conscious of it. And it's really easy to convince ourselves that we don't want to do something that we're afraid of. So even if it's like applying for a job that we really want, then we'll come up with all the excuses why that we don't really actually want it, or maybe that's not, we're not qualified and blah blah blah. So then we make all these excuses to not even try to do the thing. But really the driver in that situation is your fear of failure or just yeah, fear. So when I experienced highlining, that put me in such a like visceral experience of fear, and I felt how it fully shut my system down. Like I felt like I couldn't even think properly, I couldn't move, I was just frozen. That was like a very big wake up call to holy crap, I don't want to live my whole life feeling this way in any area. So maybe if I can overcome it in this really extreme way, then I'm going to have control over it in all the little ways that it takes over.
Have you found that to be true?
Yes, I have. So it's a it's kind of just been a never ending. process because it's, I think in a lot of ways I've overcome my fear and it's shown me that I can overcome fear in a lot of other aspects. So I'm a lot quicker at getting past that feeling, but it's also like I get this feeling of dread whenever I do feel like I'm afraid of something because it's like, dang it, now I have to do it. Like I don't have a choice because I know that that's just, if I'm afraid, there's a reason and it probably means that I actually really want to do this thing. So I guess I better overcome it and do it. But I do have a lot more tools now, and when it shows up, it's like, okay, hello, old friend, fear. Like let's get through this, and you can definitely feel the fear and do it anyway. And I think that that's the best lesson. It's not like when I'm on a high line, even still, like lots of times there's not an absence of fear, especially if I'm on a really high line. Like I still am afraid. I can just override it a bit better and just say, like, okay, hey, fear, what's up? Like, we're going to do this anyway. And I'm going to acknowledge you, but you're not going to take the driver's seat.
I love this story, this theme, because the purpose of this podcast, Taylor, is to just try to inspire, encourage people to get out and try something new. And I have a theory that a lot of people have a dream to do something, whether it's highlining or whatever. And it's really easy to come up with excuses why not to. And I think a lot of times it's fear or just the unknown that
Yep.
prevents them from trying. So, give an example. I love the way you say that conquering the high line, the fear of heights, helps you now addressing other things in life when you're afraid to try something new. Can you give an example and how you apply what you learned with the highlining?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, well, a silly example, well, it feels silly, but I work in sales now remotely, and that involves a lot of cold calling. And when I first started this job, I was terrified of cold calling. And it was hilarious because like it would really shut me down. And anybody who knows what I do for fun as a highliner would be like, seriously, like you're this anxious about just calling a random person? Like, what's the worst that can happen? This is not even a life or death, not even close kind of situation. But something about like calling random people and having to try to get them to want to talk to me completely terrified me. And I could recognize that that was silly, but I also realized it is a valid fear. I was new to the job. I didn't want to fail. I wanted to be good at what I was doing. So there was a lot of underlying fear. And that's something that I have learned from highlining is that highlining now, like it's not just that I'm afraid of being on the high line because I can rationalize that I'm not going to die. I am secured. So what is it that I'm really afraid of? So getting to the root of the fear has been a really great exercise. And I realized a lot of it comes down to the fear of failure. So now when I get on high lines, I'm not so much afraid of the fact that I'm up high. I'm afraid of, am I going to perform the way I want to perform? Am I going to let myself down? Am I going to let down the people that are watching me and expecting me to be at a certain level and maybe I can't achieve that today? And so when it came to making calls for a job, I realized the root of my fear was not really like somebody being rude to me because I kind of thought, okay, I'm just afraid of people wanting like hanging up on me and getting upset. That wasn't really what I was afraid of. I was afraid of not being performing well at my job. So
Yeah.
when you can kind of, yeah, like learn where your fear is stemming from, oftentimes I do believe it comes from the fear of failure and letting yourself or others down. Then you can kind
Yeah.
of talk to that little child inside of you that has that fear and say,
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. Like no one's going to be upset with you. You don't need to be upset with yourself. If you don't do well, like that's okay. You'll learn. And really it's all just about learning. And then I try to reframe most experiences to be around progress rather than like achievement. So,
Oh, that's what a
yeah.
valuable lesson. That's just so applicable to anything you come across in life. That's obviously a big way the sport has changed you is how to deal with fear and fear of failure. Are there other ways that you would say you've changed or grown from your highlining?
Absolutely. I mean, I could talk about it for days because it's don't I wouldn't be even close to the person I am now if it wasn't for finding highlining. The biggest thing that has really changed my perspective on my life in general is the community around highlining and the like opportunities that I've been given to even just meet incredible people and be inspired by people through this sport, like especially because it is such a new sport. when you travel, you can pretty much meet up with highliners anywhere in the world, and they will invite you into their homes. And they are always such an eclectic group of people and just so inspiring. All the stories of how people got to highlining and how it's impacted their lives. And so, I mean, I feel like I used to be um, not like introverted, but I didn't really go out of my way to like meet new people or get to know people. I was kind of always just like with my core group of friends because I was, in competitive dance growing up, and then I went to university and I met my university friends, and then that was kind of like I had these groups. I was always very shy going to meet new people and to like, be vulnerable and open yourself up to people you've never met before. It's kind of intimidating, but highlining hasn't really given me a choice for that. Like I want to travel and I want to like go highline in new spots and meet these new communities. So that often means going by myself and meeting people that I've only ever seen on Instagram or Facebook and barely talked to. And it's allowed me to realize just how easy it is to connect with new people when you have kind of a common passion, and to see the like the beauty in meeting new people and having an open mind when you are introduced to people from all over the world. And that's kind of changed my life goals, even because for a while I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I have a twin sister and she's actually in medical school right now, so I always thought that that's what I wanted to do. But this totally changed my path, and I've just been kind of traveling and working remotely for the past few years, and I don't see myself really stopping that anytime soon.
So, Taylor, explain like 6 years from zero to fourth in the world. How do you train for this? What are you doing? Is it physical 100%? Is it mental? Is it both? And what are you doing day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I it's kind of interesting because I don't really train the way you would typically see most athletes train, because I do kind of go in and out of being motivated. Really, like what I do mostly is when I'm at home and I'm not highlining as frequently, I do work out in the gym. My dad is a bodybuilder, so we've got all the equipment at my house to just kind of do full body weight training, which I find very helpful. I keep on top of my cardio, but when it comes to like training specifically for the high line, you can really only train by highlining. I mean, maybe some people would disagree, but for me, I find you kind of just have to highline. And
Yeah.
so what I do is I will plan trips where I'll go and I'll train for like sometimes a couple of months at a time with my friends, often in Europe or in the United States, and just try to highline, as many days as I can without destroying myself. But it kind of ebbs and flows like that. I don't really have like a very consistent training schedule, also with having, a job and other goals in life too. Like it's definitely not my entire focus, and being the best in the world isn't really my biggest goal. I would say my bigger goal is more to encourage other people to try the sport and share my message of overcoming your fears and getting out of your comfort zone. So that's kind of more the goal. So yes, lots of mental, meditation. I love to do yoga. I like to journal about my fears and my goals and all that kind of stuff. So it's really just a free form kind of training. I definitely am not one of the more regimented highliners.
So help me out here. I've stepped on a slack line twice in my life for probably about 2.5 seconds before I fell off. And this was
Nice.
just, a foot off the ground, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, just a complete novice. Give me a couple of pointers on how I could get better quickly to at least double my time on the line.
Yeah. So I mean, the interesting thing about slacklining is that it's not something you can force your way through. Like to compare it again to rock climbing, any beginner can have success their first time rock climbing. Most people can make it up a pretty easy route. They get to the top, that's it. With a slack line, as you've experienced, you cannot just walk across a slack line your first time. And I think the biggest thing that causes people to kind of give up is that you do actually just need to put time into it because it's kind of like learning to walk on the ground. Your body kind of has to figure it out. It's not really something you can actually think about. You have to just let your muscles kind of figure out how they are going to balance on something that kind of moves. So, what I always tell people is you need to try doing it at least, 2 or 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be for a long time. Just give it even like 30 minutes at a time, 3 times a week in the beginning. Eventually, your body's going to figure it out. But you can obviously do some things to make it a bit easier. So, one of the things I always tell people is to try to keep your hips stacked over your heels and your shoulders back, because a lot of times people tend to kind of cave in. So that causes you to wiggle more. So you really want to think about having your shoulders stacked over your hips and your hips stacked over your ankles with every step so that you are keeping your center of gravity all in one straight line. The other thing
So
to
it's
think
kind of
about,
I'm sorry, it's kind of a stand tall
totally.
thing.
Yep, stand tall, but you can
Oh,
keep your knees bent, but you want to keep
okay.
your hips kind of more forward than you definitely don't want to be sticking your butt out or anything. And
Okay.
shoulders back is huge. The next thing is a lot of people really keep their arms tense and flail them from side to side. You definitely want to actually, it feels a bit counterintuitive, but you want to relax your arms because your body will try to balance itself with your arms and your wrists moving even subtly, where you don't have to think about, oh, I'm falling to the left, put my arm up, try to correct it. It's like your arms will naturally do that, but you want to keep them a little bit loose so that it's more natural and subtle adjustments so that you're not just like flailing side to side and then the line starts going crazy and then you fall off.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna have to find a line somewhere to try this because you make it sound simple, but that sounds counterintuitive when you first step on the line. How do you go about then your training? It's not like, I mean, or maybe you do. Do you have a coach or are you just learning from others? And then if you want to figure out how to do your first almighty, someone tells you, hey, Taylor, just lock your feet like this and jump. And so you just practice over and over and over? Or is there other ways?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, especially because it is so new. Like, I don't really have anyone who I would consider, a coach or a mentor. Because, I mean, even people who are better than me at some tricks, and like I can learn some things from them, there's other tricks that I can teach them. So it's kind of a very collaborative sport in that way, where we'll often set up parallel lines. So you'll have someone beside you, and then, as they're trying something, you can see like, oh, hey, you're going a little too early for that rotation. Like, just try to go a bit later. And then they'll do the same for me. One of the biggest influences in my highline career has been Ian Eisenberg. He's created most of the tricks that people are doing today, and he's a really great teacher. He's one of the people that I go train with frequently. That's kind of one of the things I love the most about the sport is exactly that. It's that you get to all work together and help each other and teach each other things, and it's pretty fun.
Wow. So if someone is interested in getting into this sport, what's your advice? Where to get started? How to get started?
Yeah, so the first thing I will say is please never ever rig a high line without being with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Do not teach
Yeah.
yourself from the internet for highlining.
Okay.
I feel
Good
like I have to
advice.
put that disclaimer out there. But the easiest way is if, like I said, there's that Facebook group called Slack Chat. So Slack Chat is, yeah, a big group on Facebook where everyone who Slacklines around the world can kind of communicate and ask each other questions, post about events, things like that. So join Slack Chat and say like, hey, I live around here. I'm looking to meet up with the Slackline community. And you can even say if your goal is to highline or just to Slackline, and then people will reach out and put you in contact with the right people. That's the best way to do it because then usually like especially in big cities, there's almost always like slackline meetups in the parks. So like where I'm from in Toronto, we have meetups like every Friday at Trinity Bellwoods Park. So we always tell people come out to Trinity Bellwoods and we'll teach you how to slackline. Then if you really show an interest and you want to learn how to highline, we can teach you what you need to know to come out with us for that. And we'll invite you to a highline rig. But the best thing is, yeah, just finding those communities local to you, and then the local people will teach you how to do it. Alternatively, if you don't have a community close by, the best thing to do is to try to find a highline or a slackline festival near you. So in the United States, there's a really good one called Breathe. And Breathe,
Breathe as in breathe in, breathe out.
yep, and it's a yoga slackline festival. So they have all these workshops. It's really great for beginners. There's lots of beginner high lines, lots of beginner slack lines, and like I said, there's workshops. So you have people actually teaching you how to do it. So that's a really great way. If you don't have a local community, maybe you're okay with traveling to a festival and learning there.
So you're saying anyone can just show up to these places and people will kind of take you under their wing and help you out?
Totally. Like the slackline community is so welcoming, so inviting. Like really, I've never met a slackliner who isn't willing to teach someone how to slackline. So, I mean, obviously within reason, like you
Oh,
don't want to
uh-huh.
overstep too much or anything, but showing if you show up to a park and people are slacklining, as long as they have a beginner line set up there, I'm sure people will teach you. And at least they would be open to answering your questions. Usually when I set up a slack line for myself at the park, I'll put a beginner line on the ground just for people that come and say, "Hey, I want to try this." I'm like, "Okay, you're not going to get on this one because this you're guaranteed to hurt yourself, but here's this lower line here. Try this one out."
Yeah, no, that's great. And I guess you get that sort of openness from the relative newness of the sport. And it probably, hopefully not, but probably in 10 or 20 years, it's all, professional coaches and liability forms and
Yeah, unfortunately, I do see it go in that direction because that's, the way everything goes. But at least,
yeah.
for now, there's a kind of a golden age of highlining where there's a lot of people that do it around the world and a lot of people that are willing to take you out as a beginner, but you still don't have to worry about, yeah, the liability and all that stuff. But like slacklining in the park, I'm not as worried, but highlines are a little bit more involved.
Your point of just leave the setup to an expert is a
Oh,
good one. And so, from a personal beginner standpoint, like what are there any to dos, not to dos?
so I think for beginners, it's mostly just you want to make sure that you learn everything that you need to know before you put yourself out on the line. So there's things that people don't think about when they first start highlining, and that is the fact that when you do fall, you have to get yourself back up to the line. You are hanging from a leash, and it's not that long; it's only about the length of your leg. But do you know how to climb up a leash?
Yeah,
That's,
right.
so you definitely want to make sure that you know how to get yourself back up onto the line. Then once you're on the line, flip yourself in with a device called a hangover. So that's like a little rolly carabiner that lets you kind of almost like zip line back and forth on the line.
Oh,
Now, once you are clipped into that, you have to pull yourself often uphill because the line has slack in it. So there will be a bit of a slope. That can be exhausting. And then if you let go, you start rolling back down to where you came from because you're on a slope. So a lot of people don't think about the energy that it's going to take them to come back. So one thing that I tell people a lot of times is when you're going out for your first time, don't push yourself. Don't push yourself to the point where you're exhausted and then you have to come back because you don't even like if you thought trying to stand up on the line was hard and climbing a leash was hard, wait till you try to put yourself back. You want to keep some gas in the tank because it can be unexpectedly difficult.
that's good advice. Yeah. I would imagine you recommend people start on just a really low to the ground slack line to get the balance and some of the basic techniques down first.
Totally. Yeah. Because you want to learn, like, one thing people don't think about is that you can't just walk out onto a high line by stepping onto it because you're often over a cliff edge. So you can't just like step up the way you would on a slack line that's like a foot off the ground. You have to find a way to go from your butt to your feet.
Uh-huh.
So those are called mounts. And a lot of people don't realize that you need to learn a mount before you can try highlining because yeah, there's no way to get up just from walking from the anchor. So what you do is you clip yourself in with like the device, the rolly carabiner. You roll yourself out past what we call the no fall zone. So that's where if you were to fall, you would hit the cliff
Uh,
edge or the slope or
yeah.
whatever. So
Uh-huh.
you're out into where it's open space. Then that's where you go from sitting to standing. And so we always teach people the mounts like on lower lines in the park. There's a few different options that you can choose from. So you kind of pick whichever one feels best for you and commit to learning that one. And then once you have that mastered, then, we can teach you how to climb the leash.
Yeah. Well, I gotta figure out how to stay on for more than 3 seconds first.
It just takes practice, I promise. It'll get
Yeah,
easier.
I can imagine like anything in life. But uh, Taylor, this podcast is really all about encouraging other people to get outdoors, try something new, try something physical. You've already had some great advice. Do you have any other words of inspiration or encouragement to get someone to go out and try some slacklining, highlining?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really love the carpe diem theme of your podcast. So I kind of want to share when I was really really afraid of highlining. I had this kind of thought that was like, you're gonna die one day, and do you want to die as someone who never did something this cool? So I mean,
Yeah.
because it's a decision that you can make. If you really don't think you care about it, then you don't have to go out and do anything that does excite you. But if you have even that small little part of you that feels like you see something like highlining and you think, wow, that would be so cool, then find a way to do it because I always feel like the fear of something extreme and intense and also magnificent like highlining is not nearly as bad as the feeling of spending the rest of your life wishing that you had dared to do it.
Oh, that is so the motto of this podcast. Thank you for saying that. I love
Yeah.
it.
Well, thank you for having me on here because I think, I'm always happy to share my story and I'm always happy to hear about other people who have chosen to, seize the day and do the things that other people are maybe a little bit too uncomfortable to try to do. And hopefully we can encourage more and more people to wake up to what their potential is and how awesome life can be when you just kind of step outside of that comfort zone.
Hear, hear. Hallelujah. So the final question I ask all my guests is, what's your next big goal? Do you have some other dream accomplishment that you're looking to in the future?
Yes, and I think it actually might happen, hopefully within the next couple years. But my big goal for highlining right now is to kind of push it more into like mainstream media to raise awareness for what the sport is. And to do that, I would really love to highline across Niagara Falls.
Wow. Has anyone ever done that?
So there was a tightrope walker, Nick Walenda, who tightroped
Oh,
across
yeah.
Niagara Falls. This was like, oh
Yeah.
man, it must have been like over 10 years ago now, maybe 15 years ago he did that. And I remember it was this whole big thing on the news and everyone was freaking out. And they made him do it attached. He wanted to free solo, but he was attached. I wouldn't even say that we want to be free solo. We want to be attached because that's what highlining is to me.
Smart. Smart
And
gal.
so I think we can make it happen. And my dream would be to have it be this big spectacle where me and a few friends cross Niagara Falls on the big High Line, but then we also have some freestyle High Line set up to do a little performance and show people, the other side of highlining that's not just walking, that's bouncing and doing tricks. And yeah, just try and show people what the sport is. And maybe we could even do some like slackline workshops in the parks nearby to have people try out some lines close to the ground and maybe inspire some people to become highliners one day.
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Brilliant. Wow. That's great. I look forward to the day when that event shows up. And I'm not all that far from Buffalo, and my daughter's out in Rochester, New York. So
Oh,
maybe
so
I
you'll
can
have to
even
come
show up
watch.
and take a lesson from you. Yeah, exactly.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you so much for the time today, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. This is definitely an honor to be considered one of the people that you want to showcase. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, I learned a lot. You have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for listening to the Carpe Diem Live Your Dream podcast. If you like the show, there's nothing more valuable to me than you following it and sharing it with others. I drop a new episode every Friday, so tune in again for another great adventure story. And check out the accompanying website, www.gocarpediemnow.com, and then go seize the day and live your dream.